I'll repeat the question one more time for those who didn't catch that. K Madden 462 wants to know, what is your definition of happiness? I ask that to a lot of people and they're usually stumped. Okay, so I actually got this question about 3 days ago, and so I had some time to like sit and think about it. And I can understand, after thinking about it and like, putting thought into it, I could totally understand why people are stumped by this, because I realized that the word happiness, in my opinion, is too broad of a term to give one definition. So the way I worked it out in my head was that I divided, and it's probably more than 3, but just for the sake of simplifying this conversation, I divided happiness into 3 types of happiness. So to me, happiness in itself can't be defined or lumped into one thing. The 3 branches of happiness to me would be 1, excited, and I think excited is probably the easiest form to attain. And, depending on the person, like some people have depressions and stuff and they don't experience that type of excitement. But to me, it's like, I would say excitability is more like hedonistic pleasures of life, and whether they're good or bad. Not all hedonism is bad hedonism. But you know what I mean? Like simple things, like if you get a like on Instagram and you get excited for that second, or if you have a cup of coffee that tastes really good and you get excited for that second. I don't know what would be another example of this. If you eat something that tastes good, stuff like that. I feel like excited are short little bursts of happiness that only last temporary, that only last for like a few minutes or so, sometimes maybe a few days, depending. Like if you had some kind of grand achievement of some sort, I would say excitability could last a few days. But usually, even with those grander things like grand achievements, like if you you passed a degree of some kind, you were studying for your law degree and you passed it, you might get this like huge burst of excitement that lasts like a few days or a few weeks, but even that eventually dies down. And I think that's what I mean by excitability. It's like, it's a very temporary form of excitement. And I think it's one of the easiest ones to attain on a daily basis, because you get them all day long. You get a like on Instagram, an email from a friend, things like that. You just get these like little bursts of excitement. So, okay, that's my first definition, is excitability. My second form of happiness that I would, in these 3 branches that I created, to me would be content. I would say content is being able to look at your day or your life, depending on, how old you are or where you're at in life. But let's just, simplify it with day. I would say content is being able to look at your day and say, I did everything I had to do today. It's kind of like a feeling of completion. Like you can sort of look around your room and say, okay, everything's in the right spot. You can look at your to-do list and say, okay, I did everything on my to-do list. I'm content. I'm okay with today, and I'm okay with how today went. I would say content is a big one. More difficult, again, like I'm kind of like categorizing these 1, 2, 3 in levels of achievement, like what's easier to achieve. I think, again, the first one is excitability. I think that's pretty easy to achieve. You can achieve it through a drink of alcohol, you know what I mean? Or, a good grade on an exam. Level 2, content. I think that's a little more deep. It's more looking at the big picture of things and the things you want to do with your life and everything like that. So contentment, again, how did your day go? Are you happy with, it's funny, I just used the word happy in that, but let's say content. Are you content with how everything in your day went? And can you go to bed and rest peacefully? That would be the second. And for me, the third type of happiness, which I believe can be the most difficult to attain depending on who you are. I know for me personally, it's the most difficult one to attain. It's kind of like my goal in life to figure out how to attain this one right now. But anyways, I'm leading you guys on here. The third one to me would be peace. And I would describe peace as being able to let go of fear and take in the love around you, even if that's not your norm. So like for me personally, how this would manifest is I always had a lot of like trust issues in my life, like because of childhood trauma I had experienced. And I've always been like a very guarded person, and it's weighed heavily on my life. Like it's really had a negative impact on me in my life in many ways. So to me personally, peace is when I can just let go of those fears and actually like trust the moment. You know what I mean? And I don't even think you have to have trust issues to be able to relate to this, because I think trusting the moment is just letting go of fear, period. You know what I mean? Because like, your personal issue or like thing that kind of holds you back may not be trusting relationships, but it could just be trusting that everything's going to be okay. Trusting whatever fear that you have, because you could be afraid of, financial stress. You know what I mean? You could be financially stressed and afraid that you're not going to be able to pay your bills on time or anything, whatever like that. It's not necessarily a trust and relationship thing, but it's still to a degree a trust thing, because it's like you're not trusting the universe that everything's going to be okay. So to me, peace is letting go of whatever fears are holding you back and really just enjoying and appreciating life for what it is, no matter how difficult it is. Because you can even, and I think this must be really difficult to achieve, but I believe you can even learn how to have peace even in times of suffering. So yeah, just to kind of like quick review your question in faster words, I think it's hard to define happiness because there is no such thing as one type of happiness. You can branch it out. And to me, those branches are 1, excitability, 2, contentment. I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. And 3, peace. I'm going to be honest right now. I don't really think I'm much of any of those right now. I know that's like a little harsh to say out loud, or like a little jarring to admit, on this podcast, but I do go through cyclical depressions throughout the year. I would say like 2 or 3 times a year I suffer from depression. And right now I'm kind of going through a cycle and I'm in the thick of it. And what I noticed personally is that when I go through this end of the depression cycle, it's usually because I relied too heavily on the first type of happiness that I told you about, which is hedonistic pleasures and easy to get excitable things that aren't really serving me in the long term. And I think for me personally, once I've like I've abused those types of things, I start to get to a point where they don't work for me anymore. Like those hedonistic things don't work for me anymore. And then I have to face like the other two, which is contentment and peace. And I think those are the I think it's a little bit easier for me to attain contentment, because I think you can set goals and you can think about long-term goals and you can try your best to achieve daily goals. So I think to a degree it's a little bit easier to attain those things, but to me peace is probably the most difficult thing to attain. And I would imagine I'm not alone there. It's probably just the human experience. Like, like anybody who's just like chronically at peace, like they're an enlightened being. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think they exist on this earth. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I think that's, to me, that's like the goal of life, is to try to find peace as much as possible. And I know that I'm not the only one. Like, I can't be the only one who like feels that way, that feels like that's the hardest one to attain. And that's the goal. You know what I mean? That's like one of the biggest goals of life. Anyways, that's my answer to what is happiness. It's definitely not an easy one to answer. And I didn't just come with that on the fly. I had like 3 days to think about that. Okay. So that was that. Question number 2.